Hi, this is Vince, Auto Restoration Videos. Today we're going to be talking about doing seams. Okay, I mean edge seams, edge binding, mostly edge binding, edge treatment. Okay, now I did another video on this on YouTube, but it was from a seamstress's point of view. Okay, now this video is going to be from an upholsterer's point of view. Okay, now there's a big difference. The seamstress is working with light fabric, where an upholsterer is working with heavier fabric, alright, using different techniques because the material is a lot heavier. Make sure you check out my website, autorestorationvideos.com, and click on my Facebook link. Okay, it's a business Facebook link. So just read what you can, and if you like it, click like. You get to find out what my latest projects are and what kind of gripes I'm having. Okay, now in this video, like I said, we're going to start doing this little bit of an involved project here. But one step back here, what we're doing doesn't really matter too much. It's what you're going to learn from what I'm doing. Alright, now I'm doing the fringe around the medieval tent. Now, a lot of people out there is going to say, hey, how's that going to help me? I'm not doing no tent. You see, now that's where a lot of people go stray. You can learn a lot from something, and you can apply it to different things throughout your entire life. You can't have a closed mind in this business. That is the upholstery business. Okay, now, let me show you what I'm talking about. Well, first, I started out with this fringe, all right, that goes all the way around a big medieval tent. Alright, it was all big squares cut out, like a big sawtooth thing. Alright, but I made a mistake. I make mistakes too. I made a mistake, and I made this out of ripstop nylon and camo nylon. Okay? Real flimsy stuff. And when I started sewing it together, it wasn't hanging right. It didn't have the weight. It didn't have the bulk I was looking for. Alright, you need something that when you look at it, you can say, oh, that's some heavy stuff. But when you're looking at some nylon hanging down and look like a little flag, it just wasn't doing it. Alright, so I decided to go to marine grade top material. That's some heavy duty stuff, and it is really heavy. Alright, now it's blue. It's like a darker blue, so it's going to match with one side of my tent. It's a reversible cover for the top. I got blue on one side and camo on the other. Alright, that's made out of the nylon. Alright, and it's pretty much waterproof. So the fringe I'm putting on is dark blue on one side, and that's going to be reversible also. So when you flip the whole tent inside out, it's going to be camouflage. Alright, on the top. Alright, I didn't do the bottom yet. So now, my thinking is, what I want to do all the way around these squares, I'm still doing the big squares. What I want to do is put piping on. The same kind of piping that you see on like cars from the 50s, on the seats that go all the way around. Now, in those cars, they use a hard plastic nylon piping. Alright? But we don't use that anymore. No. Now, what we're using is this foam. This is actually foam. Real soft plastic, almost like a foam type deal. And we're going to use this, and we're going to cover it with black vinyl. Alright? And then we're going to leave a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Alright? So, off the top of our head, how big is the seam allowance? How big is the whole piece going to be? So we got 1/2 inch for each side, right? So that's 1 inch. And then we have to go around this, which is probably about, let's say maybe something like 3/8. That'll put us in the ballpark. So we have 2 3/8. Alright? That's how wide we have to make our strip. Alright? To go around here. Now, here's the thing. There's always limitations to no matter what you do, what kind of material you use. You have to take that all into consideration when you're making something. Alright, now if you look at this, let's say you wanted to go around a 90-degree corner. That's about the 90-degree corner right there. All right? Now, that's possible. Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's possible. But your material is all going to bulk up or it's going to puff up in the air. One or the other. You really shouldn't go around something on a 90-degree angle with this piping. This is about 3/16 diameter, okay, in case you're curious. All right? Ideally, you know, I'd say like the tightest bend you want to go around something with this piping is on an old 50s seat. Like maybe like a 4-inch radius or something. All right? Like maybe like the bottom of a beer can or a coffee cup. All right? Something like that. All right? Maybe not as bad as that. Maybe we could probably cut it down to like a silver dollar. We can get by pretty good without having no ripples, no bulks. All right? Don't forget, on the flip side of my blue heavy-duty material, I will be using my camo material. Now, you say the camo material was nylon. Aren't we going to get all ripples in there? Yeah, that's possible. How are we going to get that bulk that I was looking for? Huh? We got to put something in there that's heavy. All right? Something to give it bulk and thickness. What are we going to use? Well, first idea that came to my mind was Dacron polyfill thin sheet. Comes in a big roll, like maybe 4 or 5 feet wide, okay? And it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. All right. Now that's not bad. That will give us the bulk we want. You stay with me now and think as I'm talking, all right? Now what's going to happen? You hang that outside, all right? You're using this material here, and I don't care what you do. Whenever you punch a hole through something, you're leaving a hole. Even if you go through there with thread, you're going to have a little point where water can get in, and it'll come down, and it will fill that Dacron polyfill with water, or at least it will get damp. And what's going to happen when Dacron polyfill gets damp? It's going to start to stink. You might have algae forming in there and all of this stuff. Okay, let's cross that off the list right now. We can't use it. We can't use it on an outdoor situation. Inside only. So, what are we going to use then? Well, we're going to have to use something plastic. All right? Yeah, you can put plastic outside for 1,000 years almost. As long as it doesn't degrade, you're going to be all right. All right? Now, that's a good idea. But we don't want no hard plastic in there. We're going to have to get something soft. All right? Now you think, what can I use that's plastic and that's soft? Well, the first thing that popped into my mind was bubble wrap. But hey, that's kind of chintzy, man. What if that nylon on the back gets wet, and you look at the back of the nylon of the camo material there, and you can see the indentation? How cheap is that going to look? Man, that's going to look like crap. Come on, I got to come up with something better than that. All right, let's think. How about some thin plastic foam? All right, you're saying, what the heck is thin plastic foam? Now think about it. Think about it. In the construction business, before they put a house down, all right, onto the concrete, and they put you have your foundation. Then on top of your concrete blocks, they normally put a piece of wood down. Then they build the whole house, attached to that wood. Well, they usually put a piece of foam underneath of that wood before it goes onto the concrete to stop the moisture coming up from the concrete, going into the wood and rotting it. All right? So that plastic is acting like a vapor barrier and a waterproof block. Let's see. This is the stuff we're talking about here, right? I think the Pink Panther might make this. Of course, it's all pink, but I'm not sure. Now this comes apart. This is 2 rolls stuck together. All right, you can split these things apart, and it's like they got a dotted line in here. You just rip it apart. Okay, you can do that if you want, but I need this width because of my fringe is bigger than 1 width. All right, let's take a look at that fringe now. Take a look at it. This is it. Now let's take a look at this. Alright, what kind of problem are we going to have when we sew this? And how'd you make it? How'd I make it? I made one piece, about maybe 3 feet long. Alright, and I used pattern paper and I cut it out. And when I cut it out, I made sure that at each end I had half of this block plus seam allowance. So if I had to tie these pieces together, I would just sew it on a 1/2 inch seam allowance and it would come out basically the same size as this when it was done sewing, except you see a piece down the middle. Now the idea here is to make this thing as long as possible without putting a seam in it. Alright? The less seams the better. So if you buy maybe, 10, 15 yards of this thing, you roll the whole thing out. You put your pattern paper on and then you cut it out. You're not going to, go the narrow distance and cut out maybe, 4.5 or 5 feet of this material and then have a seam every 4.5 feet. That'd be crazy. Okay? Now, you got to think about all of this stuff before you get involved in any kind of a project that is kind of like off the wall. Right? You always have to do that. You always have to stay one step ahead of where you're going to sew. Because if you don't, you're going to sew yourself in a blind corner. And you won't know how to get out. You're going to have to start all over again. All right. Now, let's get back to our piping. Now this is our piping, right? Now my first thought was, hey, let's get some camo material. This is a little bigger than it should be because I didn't even measure it, just for demonstration purposes. So now we're going to put this around here, all right? And we're going to get our welting foot. I'll show that to you in a second. And we sew this thing, all right? Now, I was thinking, you put this on, but you got camo on one side, right? Yeah, you got camo on one side, and on the other side you got dark blue. On the camo side, how are you even going to see this? It's like you're doing all this work for something that isn't even going to be seen unless you're standing 5 feet away from this fringe and you look at it. So, see this? Forget that, all right? That's no good. Now you want something that's going to stand out a little bit on each side. All right? I mean, that's just common sense to me. So, okay, one more step backwards here. Ideally, what we should have for a covering, for this plastic, would be something cut on the bias. All right? Because this way the material would open and close like this, and you wouldn't see any wrinkles, especially if we went around tight corners or something. All right? But, now, people are saying, what the heck is the bias? Okay, now you have material goes from one way to the other. It comes off the bolt, all right? Instead of going straight up or straight across, we go on a 45. Go on a 45 across the material, and this way we cut the material on the bias, which is like a 45-degree angle, all right? And you have no real thread strength. And so the material is subject to be able to bend really easy. Now that's nice, but let's think about that. Most material that you can cut on a bias is not suitable to outside weather. Alright? And the material will rot, and chances are there is no sunblock in there either. No UV block. Okay? So, what are we going to use? How about some vinyl with UV block? Black. Okay? Black is going to show up on our blue. Alright? And black is going to show up a little bit on our camo that's on the flip side. Now, let's just see what happens. We put this around here. We fold it over. And we come up with this. You know, this is a little short. This is only about 3/8 seam allowance. Don't forget, I didn't measure this. I just, cut a scrap off just for demonstration here. Okay? Now vinyl doesn't stretch that good. Alright? Doesn't really stretch that good. They do have stretchable vinyl, but I'm not using it. Not right now. Now let's go back